All right, we're going to get started. So for those of you who are watching the replay and that are new to me, I'm Johanna Burkhardt. And I did a live maybe a week and a half ago about the 4 stages of grief. And I'm going to go over those as well briefly for those who missed that live and just to kind of wrap it all together. If you're on live, you can always post any questions that you have along the way. And at the end, I will go through them and answer the questions that you have. Today is a very special day to be doing this. This is the anniversary, or would have been my dad's 61st human birthday. He is no longer with us. He's been gone for about 4 years. And he's the reason why we're even doing this at all, because I just kept having this really overwhelming feeling in my heart to speak about grief. I've experienced quite a few people passing away in my life, and recently a few more friends had passed away as well. Over the last 10 years, I've experienced quite a bit of loss. But this isn't just about physical loss. While we're going to talk about that, we're also going to understand that grief wears many masks, and that forgiveness is used for so much more than we allow or give it credit for. Because grief isn't just about the physical loss. It is about the loss of an old identity. As we spiritually awaken and become more aware of beliefs and programmings and conditionings and things that are happening in our life, we begin to shift and no longer resonate with a lot of those things. And when you go through these huge life changes, you have to shed these old identities, these old programmings, these old beliefs. You have to literally be like the snake and shed the old skin to allow the new shiny skin, the new you, to radiate its beauty. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that grief wears many masks, and that forgiveness and the exercises that I'm going to go through can be applied to physical loss. It can be applied to shedding an old identity. It can be applied if you've moved across country and you have shifted your life completely. It can be applied if you have lost a job or recently accepted a new position or started a new business or closed a business. Any kind of life change, no matter how big or small, can invoke the grief process. It can require forgiveness so that we can allow that part or piece of us to be a foundational piece of what builds us, okay, instead of something that happened to us. So going into that, let's break down the 4 stages of grief. And I do have some notes with me just so I can bring myself back on track in case I get off track a little bit. Okay, so stage number 1 in grief is denial. I spent a lot of time in denial. And denial is, this isn't happening to me. This isn't normal. I'm overwhelmed. I'm distracted. I'm numbing. We just don't believe that either this is happening or that we had any part in this, okay? Because that's a really big piece of denial, is owning the responsibility of our part in whatever is happening. When we deny responsibility for our emotions or for our life, and we place it outside of us, that is all victim mode, right? This happened. This isn't fair that this happened to me. This isn't fair that, I didn't deserve this. Why did this happen? Why did this person have to be taken from me? We get into this extreme shutdown mode. And it's almost as if, like, the visual they're showing me is like we go inside of this space and like the mirrors just turn, almost like a solar panel. And we're just reflecting everything back because we don't want to believe, we don't want to take responsibility, we don't want to own anything that's happening. because then it would make it real, right? It would make it real. And that's the second stage, is the anger. The anger comes in. Reality sets in that this is real, that this happened. We start to feel frustrated. We start to feel helpless. We start to feel powerless. Again, victim mentality, victim mode. And I've been here too. The anger inside of us is, this is not fair. I didn't deserve this. I can't believe this happened. And this part of the grieving process is a super important one, because anger is a catalyst. Anger is meant to be the thing that invokes change in us. It's that fire, right? So if you're sitting too close to a fire, it's going to reach its boiling point, and you're going to get up and move. You're going to get away from it. But so often people don't. We sit there in front of that fire and we suffer. We feel the heat and we feel like we have no choice. Or the even worse part of this, that we deserve to feel it, right? Because maybe we said something or did something in our life that we feel that we now have to suffer for. That we feel that because we didn't do the right thing, or that we believe we didn't do the right thing, or because or that we are deserving of this pain, that we sit and we suffer through it. That it must have happened because we did something. And that's just not the case. That's not true. But I experienced this as well. And I'm going to use a lot of my own examples today, because I feel like people resonate better when you give them a personal example and let them know that you too have been through this. So with my father passing, in the 4 months that I knew that he had left, that he was here with me and everything that was happening, instead of dealing with the grief that I was already feeling, knowing that he was going to die, I knew that he was going to die. There was no faith or hope that it would be anything less, right? It was too far gone at that point, his illness. So as I'm sitting with him, as he's in my home, I'm already grieving. Or let's say I'm avoiding the grieving. I'm avoiding and denying everything that I'm feeling because I don't want to deal with the grief. I started in the first stage of grief and denial very early on. And I denied that this was happening. I didn't spend that time with him on a more personal father-daughter level. I just stepped into the caregiver role. I felt like a nurse and not his daughter. And so therefore, something changed in the way that I connected with him. And when he passed away, I regretted that. I really felt that I did wrong by him by being in that space. I really felt that I could have done things differently, and that maybe it was my fault that he died when he did, or how quickly that he passed, or, the circumstances. We go into that mode of overthinking everything and getting super angry once it sets in, because we feel like now we are deserving of all the pain and suffering in the world because we didn't do the right thing, or because this happened to us. And so maybe we were meant to experience, maybe we did something in a past life. And so we feel that we are deserving of this terrible karma or this pain. And so I understand, and I know for those that have been through that. But the same thing happens in a spiritual awakening when we start to shed the old identity. We get angry, we get frustrated, we feel helpless and powerless with all the shifts that are taking place. We no longer know who we are, or where we're going, or what we're supposed to be doing, or why something is happening, or why we have to let go, or why our friends are shifting, and why all these things are happening. And so instead of opening up to that possibility, we get super pissed, right? We get super pissed. But that, again, that catalyst is there to invoke change within us. It's there to say, okay, use this anger as fuel. Channel that feeling into changing your reality, into changing your existence, and changing the way that you see things, and why this could have happened, right? Because you'll understand in my forgiveness process what I mean by that. So moving on to the third one is bargaining. And this is when we step into the dwelling and the obsessing about the what ifs, if only, and really This is the point where most people begin in a physical loss to connect with that higher consciousness, to connect with God, to Source, to Buddha, to whatever you want to call it, connecting to something greater than yourself, something bigger than yourselves that you feel has more power than you. And that's the key right there, is that we believe that there is something greater than us that has more power than us, that is here to save us, or that will help us, that we can negotiate with this God or source energy into either bringing them back to us, or in some cases, people will not want to be here anymore. They'll be begging to go and leave this human experience to go be with their loved one. The same thing happens in a spiritual awakening, though. And as we move through the stages of that awakening and having new up levels and new awarenesses, we dwell and obsess and begin to bargain with our guides and our loved ones and source energy about if how can I get to this space? Why is this happening? What do I need to do? Maybe if I hadn't done this, I would be here now. If I had done this, I would be there now. And we start to have this dialogue with them, that they are sitting up there, that one person is up there saying, I always say God is like Oprah in the sense that this is what I really, really believe, that a lot of people feel this way, that there's somebody up there who's like, you get a car, and 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 you didn't live a good enough life. You didn't do all the things that I told you to do. You did bad things, so you get to live in purgatory. You get to have no money, no job, nothing. And that's not true whatsoever, because what they always come back and tell me is that we are an aspect of God. We are made up of that same consciousness that is the God energy. We are a fractal, a piece. So it's if you took this amethyst and broke it into millions and millions of pieces. Each little tiny piece is an aspect of the same whole. So knowing that, how could we not be just as powerful as God? How could we not be just as powerful as that creator? There's no possible way that we can't be, because we are of the same consciousness. We are of the same energy. We are an aspect of God. But we believe in something outside of us, and we pray and we bargain and we say, I will do anything. I will do anything. What do you want me to do? And there's nothing wrong with that. Please do not misconstrue. There's nothing wrong to praying to a higher consciousness, to doing it. But what I will say is take responsibility and put the power back in your hands, and know that you are a co-creator here. It isn't about what you do or don't do. It's about how you listen. It's about listening in the quiet, listening to the quiet, listening so intently to that quiet and that stillness that you finally hear your heart speak. You finally hear the truth of everything. You stop giving your power away to something else, saying, because no one is going to save us. We are here to save ourselves. And so sometimes life can get very, very hard, and it can get very, very challenging, hard, all of those words, right? Where we feel stuck. We feel like nothing's working. We're not moving. Everything's happening to me. And there's a reason why that happens, because you're hitting this wall. You're hitting this resistance where you have to realize you have the power. It is in your hands. It is in your heart. And that you can pray and ask for help all day long. And what they're saying is we're telling you, we're speaking to your heart, but you're not listening, because it's not the answer maybe that you want, or it's not as easy, or you don't think that you're worthy, or you don't believe that it's happening, right? So we have to get very, very still, and we can pray and we can speak to our higher consciousness, and we can have that beautiful dialogue with them. But please know that they are speaking back to you. It's in that stillness and connection to your heart that you're actually able to hear that response. And that takes me into the fourth stage of grief, which is acceptance. Acceptance is the key, right? Awareness is the door. Acceptance is the key that unlocks the door. Acceptance is, I see that something bad has happened. I see that I've lost somebody. I see that now I'm sensing all of these things. I see that what's happening in my life, I see it and I accept that it's happened. It's done. Because we cannot receive the new stuff. We cannot receive we can't receive more money. We can't receive a better, the newer version of our body. We can't receive the newer version of our consciousness, the upgraded density or vibration. We can't accept anything or can't receive anything until we first accept. We have to accept in order to receive. And they always bring me back to cash because people resonate with money, right? So if someone wants to hand you $100 bill, in order for you to receive that $100 bill, you have to open up your hand. You can't be clenched. You can't be closed off. You can't be in resistance. You have to relax and open your hand to it, and you have to accept it. Acceptance is just opening yourself up and knowing that this is there. It's happened. Now, when you enter into that surrender of that acceptance, you can now receive, whether that's receiving a message from your loved one and hearing their voice or seeing their messages or feeling their presence, or if it's you doing the same thing with your guides and your loved ones, or if it's receiving the next version of you, or if it's receiving the next opportunity. You have to unclench. You have to relax. You have to accept. So those are the 4 stages of grief, and they're powerful when we hear them outlined and are aware of and there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with being in any of those stages. I definitely want to say that. And I also want you to know that there is no timeline or process for which you move through stuff. You have to do it at your own pace, but the key is to not get stuck in one for an extended amount of time. You'll know when it's time to move on and move through to the next stage if you're listening. If you're listening to your body, to your energy, to your heart, and you're knowing what's happening. I'm going to adjust my mic here. Okay, so let's go into the forgiveness exercises. And let's see, before I do that, let me just check the comments. Yes, I prayed to die for many years after my dad passed away. Yeah. Yep. I don't think I ever reached that point for that reason. But my dad's passing I was already in a spiritual awakening, but my dad's passing is what brought about the openness of my gifts, right? So that's when all my extrasensory abilities, all of them turned on with his passing. And it was like his way, I almost feel like it was his gift to me so that I could remember and connect and remember that I am more than this body, right? That when we die, a physical death, that we just lose this form. And I had no intention of talking about this, but I'm glad that we're going into it because I felt this energy of remembrance before I got on this, because I always connect with my guides and my dad and my team before I get on any kind of training or anything. And the energy that was being shown to me was the energy of remembrance, connecting to the fact that we are a light being, that we are energy, having a human experience. This body is just a vessel. It is like a car or a house that we take up residence in. And we came to have a physical touch experience and one of connection. And they often remind me that we are the only species, if you will, or race that it's probably more of the species, but it is a race as well, that is born and cannot take care of themselves. Think about almost every animal that is born can take care of itself right out the gate, right? It can walk, it can move, it can do all the things, but human beings cannot. Why? Why is that? It's because we are here to have that physical, emotional connection. We are meant to connect. And we spend so much time protecting our energy, staying away from people, and not having that open, transparent, vulnerable connection with everybody that we meet. We put on a front, we pretend, we wear a mask, we do all the things that are not authentic, that are not vulnerable, that are not real, because we're so afraid of that feeling of vulnerability, that feeling that that person could hurt us, that feeling that they will reject us. So we don't open ourselves up, but we have to remember that we are here having a human experience for a reason, and so we should have that experience. And oftentimes when I connect with benevolent beings, which are loved ones, the biggest thing people ask is like, so what happens when you transition? What happens when you lose your body? And they're like, nothing. It's like everything, they just no longer have a body. They're still here among us. They're doing their thing. They're doing their mission, their part. They can hear you, they can see you, they can interact with you in their ways, of whatever ways they learn to communicate with you. But you just can't see them. And the reason why you can't see them is because they are in a much higher vibration. And when you think about the closest comparison I can give is sound, right? Sound moves. So you can oftentimes hear the sound of something before it's shown to you. And that's because it's moving at such a high rate of speed. And that's what they are. They are vibrating at such a high rate of speed, a higher vibration. If we are not of that vibration, we are not going to see them. So sometimes that's why we get glimpses or see shadows or feel them but don't see them. And that's because they're at a higher vibration. They just don't have a dense physical body anymore. But the reality is, and I'm not going to take this away from people because I still have my moments where it's like we miss that human part, right? We miss the ability to see them, to hear their voice, and to feel their touch. And so it is real, but we have to remember that we are the same as them. We're just still having our physical experience. And we shouldn't take that experience away from ourselves because someone that we loved is no longer with us. So I hope that that helps because somebody needed to hear that. So let's dive into forgiveness. So I'm actually going to read a definition because I feel like the definition is insane for me. To forgive says to stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. It also means to cancel a debt. And part of this I agree with because, again, with the anger, right? Forgiveness, when we're holding a grudge or we're holding on to something, we are attached to it. So in order to be attached to something, we have to have some type of emotional investment in it. Otherwise, we're not going to be attached. We're going to be neutral and we're going to be like, yeah, okay. And it's going to be here nor there. But when we are attached, we have emotion involved. We are sad. We're feeling it means something about us, or we're angry, we're disappointed, whatever. We had an expectation and we are attached. And so when there's emotion involved, there's an attachment. So something that I always like to say is that sometimes people think that forgiveness, especially if something was happening. So say there was a trauma in your life or someone did something to you as a child. Okay. So I had to spend a lot of time in forgiveness around an abuseful situation as a child that I experienced. Not just forgiving the abuser, but also forgiving my dad for not doing anything, for not stepping in to have my back or stepping into, to help me and support me and be there for me on all levels. And so forgiveness just isn't about a physical loss or even the loss of an identity, but it's also forgiving the things that have already happened to us in our past, whether it was a childhood, a boss that did something to us, a spouse that did something to us, a friend that did something to us, or that we did to them. So when we forgive somebody, it doesn't mean we're letting them off the hook. It doesn't mean that we're giving them permission and saying that it's okay that you did this shitty thing to me. That's not what it means. What it means is you are letting go of the judgment of said event. Okay. So as we get in to this forgiveness, I want to make sure that everybody understands that whether we hurt someone or someone hurt us, it makes no difference. There was a purpose behind that pain. There is a reason why that happened. And we just have to be open to see what that means, what it's trying to show us. So in my work, I have this workbook, and some people that are going to be watching this already have access to this workbook, but it's going to be fun to kind of bring it to life. So bring to mind in your physical body and your mind and your heart, a memory, a situation, experience, a grudge, a pain, whatever it is that you have that you wish you could make be different. So what in your life do you wish could have been different, would be different, it want to be different, whatever it is. And you can go back and do this with as many ones that you want. So you can even make a list if you want of all the things, all the actions, all the experiences, all the loss, everything, right? So whether it's you did something or someone did something to you, a physical loss, or even just going through your own evolution. What are the things that you wish could have been different? And you can make a list. And let me say this. Allow it to be easy. Don't go digging. The things that are at the top of your mind right away when someone asks you that question, those are the things that you want to write down. You want to create that list. So for me, some of those things were being abused by my stepmom, right? Personally, not spending every waking moment just having that loving connection with my father. Being sexually assaulted. Right? These are things where we wake up spiritually and we get really angry because we think, why would I have signed up to be sexually abused? Why would I have signed up to be abused as a child? Why would I have signed up to go through such a horrible experience? Right? And it's honestly, we didn't sign up for that exact experience, but we did sign up to move through certain situations or energies so that we can get to the other side and one day teach another how to move through it, or to have compassion for those who are going through it. So everything that we have ever experienced in our life that has caused us to step outside of our comfort zone, that has caused us to feel emotional turmoil, that has caused us to evolve and to shift, happened for a reason. There is always purpose behind the pain. Always. Okay. So I said this before, and I'm going to say this again because literally this whole, my whole way of teaching forgiveness changed when I heard this statement. So there was a man on Oprah one time and and I don't know his name, but it really affected me, right? Because I'm all about the energy of acceptance and surrender. And he said, forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. And I thought, whoa, that's big. That's big. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. How much energetic currency do we spend dwelling on the past? It wasn't Dr. Phil. I do know that for sure. It wasn't Dr. Phil. It was some other guy. But forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. So we spend all this time dwelling on, why did this happen to me? What could I have done different? We spend so much of our energetic currency feeling and thinking and replaying the things that have happened, right? So in 2015, for me, I'm going to give you a little bit of story. In 2015 is when everything in my life turned upside down. I thought everything was going great. I was engaged to be married. I was planning a wedding. I had just signed on a home loan to take our old house off of our property and build a new one. I had just gotten a huge raise at the company that I was working with and a huge promotion. I thought life was perfect. Life was finally on track. Everything was moving. Everything was great. And I took a trip to watch my daughter graduate from high school. And I saw how sick my dad was. And I knew in that moment that I was going to be back soon and that everything was going to be different. And I really stepped into denial about it and got on a plane and came back home. Literally 2 days later, I got the call. And I had to get back on a plane. I had to ask for a leave from my work. It was supposed to be the first day of me starting my new position in the company. And I had to ask for a leave. And I told them I had no idea when I was going to be back. And I did my very best to stay in touch with my manager and to let her know everything that was going on. And when I got there, I was told that my dad had 4 months to live. So in 3-week period of time, I sold my childhood home, everything that he owned within it. I retired my dad. I did all of the medical, all the billing, all the things, right? I think I slept maybe 2 hours a night for 3 weeks straight. Got my dad back to North Carolina, where we hadn't even had it. We had just gotten a temporary rental from a friend on close to our home. And so I got him there because we didn't really even have a house yet, right? We were kind of in between trying to find a place to stay while the new house was being built. So we get back and I get him settled. And about a week later, after being home, so I'd been off work for about a month, I'd go back into the office only to find a box on my desk. I had been let go because I had left during summer in the busy season. Working real estate, that was something that they said didn't matter what was happening in my life, they were going to let me go because of it. So here I am, the breadwinner of the family, in the middle of a home loan, in the middle of planning a wedding. Invitations had already been sent out. I have no permanent home. I have a chance of losing my home loan now. I have no more money to plan a wedding. And I have my sick father. And I went into freaking ridiculous anger mode. And I stayed there a very long time, even after my dad died. I had so much resentment and I spent so much time dwelling and spending all this energetic currency wishing for bad things to happen to the people that I worked with, for doing that to me, and for how my life had turned out. And I think about that now and I think, man, I spent so much time dwelling on, why did they do this to me? Why did this happen to me? I should have done this differently. How could I have done this? And then when I heard that statement, forgiveness is giving up hope that the past could be any different, I thought, wow, there's nothing I can do to change it. There isn't a damn thing I can do to change anything other than what is happening right now in this moment. And that's when my team came in, my guides, my collective, and they said, in the presence, in the moment, you step into your God, goddess energy. You step into your creator energy. So whatever you are feeling in this moment, if you're dwelling on the past, that emotion, that anger, that turmoil, it doesn't change the past. It doesn't even change the present. You know what it does change? It changes the future. It changes where you go. Your trajectory, your pathways open based on the emotion and the energy of which you are focused on. So whatever you are focusing on, whatever you are dwelling on, is going to open more roads and pathways for you to experience another lesson, another way to see this current energy, hoping that you will shift. So this is where that looping comes in, right? where we keep experiencing the same crap over and over, that Ferris wheel, where we feel like we're just never going to get off the same shit. I'm never going to get what I want. I'm never going to get where I'm going. I'm never going to feel better about this. I'm never going to let this go because these remembrances keep happening. Well, you want to know why they keep happening? Because you're obsessing about an energy that you can't do anything about. And instead of it changing the past, it's changing your future. It's bringing you more experiences of the same. So the very first thing we can do is accept that it happened. Can you look at these experiences, these events, these actions, these people that you wish could be different? Can you look at them and say, I can accept that this is done and there's nothing I can do to change it? You don't have to like it, but you need to come into the energy of acceptance. Accept that it's happened. Okay. So here's an acceptance exercise that we can do. So you pick your memory off of your list, sit quietly, place both hands on your heart, and just begin to breathe in and out of your heart. And as you breathe, we just bring all of our awareness to our heart space, okay? So just indulge me and just take this moment and place your hands on your heart. And just sit with stillness for a minute and feel your heartbeat. Feel how your chest and your belly expands with every natural breath in and out. And you can begin to breathe a little bit deeper and just bringing your focus to your heart as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Then you want to visualize yourself in that space as much as you can with as much detail as you can and just breathe. So maybe it is just pick any experience, any event, and go back to that space in your mind. And as you bring all your focus to your heart space, allowing it to expand and contract, I want you to visualize what you were wearing that day, what was happening, any sounds. Just bring it back to life in your mind. And as you do this, all you are required to do here is observe your emotions and breathe into it without resistance. Whatever emotions come up, we ask for them to come up right now. We ask for those emotions to envelop you. For your whole body to, just for this moment, just for this short amount of time, just a couple of minutes, for you to feel every ounce of that anger or that pain without resistance. And we ask for you to spend a few minutes with that and just ask yourself, can I accept that this has happened? Can I accept that what's done is done? And allow myself to feel that pain, feel that anger, feel that resistance. And when we allow ourselves to fully feel this whole energy that just wants to be seen and heard, we actually, when we give it permission, we give ourselves permission to feel it fully. Once it's done, you will feel it leave and you will feel the energy beginning to subside. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. Anytime you have any of those emotions, I invite you to do this practice, to sit in the stillness, to breathe in and out of your heart space, to listen to the quiet, to bring that energy to the forefront and ask to be enveloped in it. Knowing all the while that it's just a very short amount of time that you have to do this. And once it leaves, I want you to notice how your body feels then and feel that shift within your body. It is very common after these types of exercises that you can feel a wave of exhaustion or defeat. Almost think about the energy of surrender because you finally faced an emotion that you were avoiding for a long time. And when you feel that energy, when you finally allowed to feel it and then you move through it, your body is just like, finally. And so it almost is like you ran a marathon. You're just exhausted and you just want to sleep, right? So I often do this exercise still to this day. Anytime a trigger happens or an emotion happens, I sit and I feel it and I allow myself to be enveloped by it, and I allow the energy to pass through me. And sometimes I ugly cry, and sometimes there's just a few tears. Sometimes there's a lot of coughing, but this is a powerful, very powerful exercise for acceptance. So another thing that's probably going to be a little bit controversial, but it's really important for me to bring up, is we benefit from everything we experience in our life, whether it's good or bad. And I know a lot of people will think that's crazy. We don't benefit. And we do. Every good or bad or funky thing that happens in our life, we benefit in some way, shape, or form from that experience. And we may not see it till later on in life. But I can tell you in my own personal experience, had I not grown up in a home where we had a lot of lack, where I wasn't supported, where my basic needs weren't always cared for, where I was abused, all of those things, if all of those things would not have happened to me, think about how different my life would be today. I wouldn't be so passionate about what it is that I do. I wouldn't be so passionate about helping others step into their power, returning to their wholeness, taking their power back, becoming that God, goddess, creator that they are meant to be. That wouldn't be my mission, because in order for that to be my mission, I had to move through some pretty shitty experiences. I had to learn how to overcome them. I had to move through them. I had to allow that boulder that stood in front of me to become the rubble of which I stood upon, watching that stack get higher and higher, allowing me to see a new perspective, allowing those energies to become a part of the whole that makes me who I am today. My life would look completely different. And these experiences still happen. So I've shared this before, but on Mother's Day, I was on the phone with my mom, and my mom is not somebody who, I don't have a mother-daughter relationship with her. It is more of an acquaintanceship, to be honest with you. It's not even really a friendship, but we've made peace with that. And so I was on the phone with her, and she nonchalantly drops a bomb on Mother's Day, that she knew, 6 or 7 years before my grandmother died, that my grandma had cancer and chose not to tell anybody. And my grandma was like my mom, and my mom knows that. My grandma didn't tell anybody she had cancer until it was too late, until she had about 2 months to live. That's when she decided to tell people. She didn't look like she was sick. And then one day it started to accelerate and she started to look really sick. But I had already moved. In fact, I had just moved to North Carolina when I found out. I'd only been in North Carolina 1 month, when she didn't tell me purposely because she knew I wouldn't have moved. So everybody in the family was super pissed that my grandma didn't tell anybody, right? We felt like our ability to help her was taken away. When she said that to me, I was very angry, and I felt that she had done it purposely as a way of hurting me. And I spent the rest of the day super angry and super emotional and just really wanting to hurt her. And I allowed myself to feel that way. I allowed myself to feel the emotions of what had happened. And I spent that day just allowing those emotions to be present. And I never said anything to my mom about this. But then the next day, I had my shift. And the shift was, had I known my grandmother was sick, I wouldn't have moved across country. I wouldn't have married my husband. My son would not have been adopted. I would not have stepped into this line of work. Everything would have looked different. Everything would have been different. My life would look different. And so in that instance, I realized that in that moment, she wasn't doing it to hurt me. She was probably doing it to protect me. And for whatever reason, she was guided not to do anything, not to say anything. And to be honest, it wasn't her business to tell me, right? It was my grandmother's. And I could finally step into the acceptance of this happened for me. It may suck. It may not be the way that we wanted things to play out. But my mom telling me that, my grandmother dying the way that she did, and everything the way that it played out, it had to happen that way. And of course, in the moment, we don't see that. It's only hindsight that we see. Hindsight is 20/20. It's only after the fact that we see that this needed to happen for us. It was a catalyst for us. It was helping us to get to the space that we needed to be to make the decision that we needed to make next. And sometimes people get stuck and they wonder why their life isn't moving forward. And it's because you've had several catalysts, but you have made the choice, because it is a choice, to not take action. Maybe from fear. Majority of the time it's out of fear. So we have to remember that we benefit. So I benefited from it happening this way. I benefited because my life is the way it is today because of that, right? I benefited from all the shitty experiences in my life because now not only can I relate to so many people, but I am a walking, breathing example that you can move through it, that life can be different, that it can be, that you can step into the energy of it's okay. So take the time to go through that memory, through that event, through that situation, and ask yourself, how have you benefited from that happening? How have you benefited from anything that you've experienced in your past, whether you were a child or not? And if you have a hard time with this, just know that you're probably still in the energy of resistance or anger, and you really have to go back into that acceptance. Because once you accept it that it's happened, you need to ask yourself, how have I benefited from this? And how can I see that my life is where I am now because of those things that happened? Those things may not have been comfortable. We may not have deserved them. It doesn't mean that a lot of the things that happened were right, that it was the right thing for them to do. But we also have to understand that people make decisions in life, parents, people in business, people in life in general. They make decisions in that moment based on their consciousness of where they are at that point. Not always are decisions made from a space of spite or because they're angry. And if it is, you have to also remember that that is the energy of what they were in, and they were just projecting that out. So we have to have a little bit of compassion. And I know this is going to be hard for some people to understand, but we have to see that that person, when they did that thing to us, they were in a really painful space. And they really either didn't know any better or didn't know a better way. And they caved so deeply to their desires to lock on to that God, goddess consciousness, right? Because think about when people do heinous crimes, when people do mean things or terrible things, it isn't because that's their mission in life, is to do that. Now, sometimes it is. Sometimes there are people who have really weird missions because they're meant to be catalysts for our journey. But oftentimes it's because they have lost that connection with the God, goddess within them. They have lost the connection to something else, that source, that they are more than this physical body, and they're more than what's happening in their current reality. They have lost the faith. They have lost that connection. And so they begin to try to take it from others. They start to begin to take that power, try to take that power from another because they have lost it within themselves. And it will make them feel better temporarily because they'll temporarily take your power if you let them. But then the ball goes back into our court. Do we want to continue to allow them to have our power by holding in the energy of resentment, holding in the energy of anger, holding in the energy of what could have been? It is through that acceptance and seeing that this happened for a purpose that we take back our power. And we leave them without our power, and they have the opportunity to find that power within themselves. And if they need to take it from another, that's the other person's issue, right? Because everybody has a choice. But in that moment, do you really want to keep giving that person or that thing or that event your power? by holding on to it, because that's the only thing that you are doing. You are giving away your power. So think about all those experiences, no matter what's happened, and see how it has really been a gift in your life. And when you do that, when you allow it to be the gift in your life, it's a funny thing that happens. You release the judgment. You release the judgment, because this is where we give our power away. When we release the judgment of an event, we are detaching the emotion from it. We see it as just an event, something that just took place. And I'm hearing in my mind that some people are really going to have a hard time with this when it comes to the physical loss of a loved one, because they feel like that they're giving that person up, or they're saying that they didn't matter, or that it's okay that they died. And that's not what it's meaning. What it's meaning is that person, you have to release the judgment of that person died, and it means something about you. That their death, that their journey, or what they did or did not do to you means something about you. You have to strip that. And this is where we come into the de-rolling process, right? In shamanism, we call this de-rolling. And that's when we attach meaning to an event, to a person, to a thing, that this means something about us as a person, that this is why this had happened, or why it isn't happening, right? So when we detach, de-roll, we have that ability to see that those things happen to build the foundation of which we stand upon. It's a part of our process. It needed to happen. And we can detach from the meaning. We can get rid of that emotion, and we can stand in our power. And we can say, that built me. That helped me to see a new way of being. That helped me shift my perspective. When that happened, I asked, what is this trying to show me? And I got to see something new, because I opened myself up to receive. I wasn't so closed off. I opened myself up. I saw that it happened for a reason, even if I didn't know what it was. And I allowed myself to receive whatever was meant to be from that. And I detached that meaning. I know that because the way that my dad died had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with what I said or didn't say. It means nothing about me. It doesn't make me any less worthy. It doesn't make me any less of a person or anything. I'm not going to go to hell. I'm not going to have these horrible things. It's not some terrible karma, right? And that's a whole nother subject, but we have a really weird, distorted interpretation of karma as humans. So what have you been choosing to believe about yourself because of these memories or experiences? So this is a question for you to ask yourself with that list. What have you been choosing to believe about yourself because of these memories or experiences? And be honest with yourself. God, how many of us aren't even honest with ourselves? What do you believe is true for you because of X, Y, and Z? And as you review these, I want you to ask yourself some more questions. So I'm just going to read these questions because these are really powerful. What is the true value that has awakened in you? So what did that experience awaken in you? Another word for awaken is awareness. So what is your new awareness because of that experience? What did you learn not to do now? Or how did it shift you? What new awarenesses did it create about you? And sometimes things happen so that they're just mere reflections of what's happening inside of you. So sometimes we need to go through 5 or 10 terrible experiences until we get that that's a reflection of how we feel, and that we are calling that in, because we are always manifesting. We are always manifesting. Whatever's in here will show up out here. End of story. So sometimes we call in these experiences because we still have not shifted our identity. We are still identifying with something that has happened instead of allowing it to be the thing that shifts our perspective. We're still trying to grab on to the oh shit handles and figure out where life is taking us, like we're on a ride, right? When we are on a ride, but you don't have to hold on and just take the beating. You can take the power. You can put the steering wheel in your hands. You can slow the ride down. You can take that control back. You have to be in this present moment to do so. So in all these experiences that you have chosen to believe something about you, start asking yourself these questions. What is the true value that has awakened, or the new awareness that has been shown up for me because of this experience? What I don't know what I was trying to say here. What has strengthened about you, right? What parts of you is stronger now because of these experiences, because of this event? And strength is not wearing the mask. Strength is not pushing your emotions down to be a big girl or a big guy. Strength is not pulling up your big girl panties and getting on with life and not dealing with your emotions. That is not strength. True strength, true courage is when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, when we are intimate with our emotions, when we understand what we are feeling, and when we understand that it is healthy and a requirement to cry in life, to have an opinion, to express ourselves, to not allow others to walk on us, right? And for us to take back our power. When we are vulnerable, when we are authentic, when we wear our truth, and we allow ourselves to be seen in all of our forms, that is strength. That is true courage. What values have you developed from these experiences? So what new values have come? Do you no longer allow yourself to be walked on? Do you no longer allow yourself to compromise your energy, to say yes to things that don't serve you? Have you learned to say no? Have you learned to not allow others to suck your energy? What values? So maybe for me, I can definitely tell you that what awakened in me was that presence is key. That giving my whole attention to the person who's speaking to me, to giving them my whole heart in that moment, to standing in that present moment and smiling and taking in the joyous things that are happening, the children laughing, the sunset, the clouds, the birds. That being present and being in the experience that I'm still having is more important. It's the only space I have any control. It's the only space I can change my life. My future changes based on the energy of this moment and the emotions that I'm in and what I choose to focus on. I choose to focus on the celebration. I choose to focus on the beauty that's happening in the moment and not worrying about what could happen that hasn't happened or what did happen that I can't change. That is the new values that came within me. Remember, you alone determine your worth and who you are. No one else, no experience, nothing, only you. You and you alone determine who you are and what you are worth. There is nothing, no success, no failure, no relationship, no lack of relationship. There is nothing that labels you, that identifies you, that makes you who you are, or determines what you get in this life but you. There isn't a God in the sky that is saying, you don't get that. If you desire it, it's available to you if you believe it. But you have to first come into this energy. So, mistakes that we make, we come into the self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of others. We have to understand that mistakes are necessary. They expand our awareness. So in order to know that a fire is going to burn you, somebody had to make the mistake of putting their hand in a fire, right? In order for new improvements to be made to cars, people had to get in car accidents. It's crazy to think about that, right? But you think about it, we came to have a physical experience. Everything we need, we have manifested. Everything we need, we have created. Someone saw a need to drink out of a cup, and so they created the cup. Someone needed to know how to communicate with somebody without driving across country or sending them a letter. So someone developed the telephone. We are the creators. But we had to make mistakes to make things better. We had to make mistakes to see how we can make things bigger or more useful, or to know that that doesn't work at all, and now we can do it this way. But in order for anything to expand our awareness, right, to have a bigger view, we have to make mistakes. Trial and error is a part of our journey. And you wouldn't have today's awareness without yesterday's action. So that, again, that mistake had to happen. The mistake that someone else made, the mistake that you made. Whatever it was necessary for the evolution of your soul and for the whole. And this is the piece for me that ties everything together. So think about it. If a friend of yours makes a mistake and they do something that they probably shouldn't have, and at that time, that wasn't their intention, right? Because of whatever state of mind they were in. They were projecting, they were acting from whatever energy that they were in. But they made this mistake and it hurt you. And when they did that, you came back to them and you said, hey, this hurt me. I didn't like this, right? You open yourself up, you have that conversation. In that moment, two things happens, or two things could happen, right? The person who made the mistake could say, oh, wow, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was the energy that I was in. That wasn't my intention. I must have been projecting. So in that moment, they have an opportunity to expand their awareness and see that they need to check themselves, that they need to check the energy that they are in before they open their mouth and speak. And you now have the awareness to realize that you shouldn't have taken it personally, that they were just in a weird situation and a weird energy and not communicating properly. And in that moment, you have a choice, right? You can hold that over their head and hold that energy forever and be angry and hold a grudge. You can choose to disconnect from that relationship and say, this is a pattern and I choose to no longer drain my energy, no longer to feel drained by having this relationship and step into your boundaries. Or you can choose to also forgive them. You can forgive them in all three, but to just say, I understand. You have a new awareness. I have a new awareness, and now you can be more conscious of the way that you communicate with each other. But none of that could have happened. Nothing we have today could have happened without mistakes being made, without trial and error. We have to see that mistakes are necessary in our own life and in the world. Because that's how we evolve, that's how we grow, that's how we expand. We see that this doesn't work, okay? So that way doesn't work? Now let me look over here. And we begin to widen our view as we practice our life in trial and error. So anytime somebody makes a mistake or you make a mistake, you have to not hold on to it. You have to see that it happened for a reason and shift and say, okay, what else can I see? Can you show me something different? I'm open. So here's some other exercises that I'm going to go through briefly, and that is, what actions, words, experiences, situations are you still holding yourself accountable for? Are you still beating yourself up for? Are you still trying to make up for? Guilt. We did something wrong one day, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to make up for it. Or for me, what I was doing is I didn't have a great childhood, a terrible childhood. So what did I do with my firstborn? I spoiled the crap out of her. I gave her whatever she wanted. She had no rules, no boundaries. That definitely is not serving her as an adult now. But it's because I felt that something bad happened to me and I needed to make it right. And so I needed to make up for that with my children. It wasn't even mine to make up for. And then as an adult, as she got older, as a teenager, and I started to see what was happening, I tried to make up for doing it the wrong way, right? And it's like, no, we can't do that. We have to step back. Things that we experienced in our life today happened for a reason. I can take responsibility for my actions. I can take responsibility for my emotions. But now it is her job to take responsibility for her life and her actions and her emotions. And she cannot blame, well, she can if she wants, but I will not feel guilty or allow her to blame me for the way that she is today. She has a conscious choice. She can say, maybe the way I was raised or grew up wasn't the best way. Maybe I don't understand boundaries. Maybe I don't understand those things. But right now, I have a choice. I can continue to blame my mom the way that I blamed my stepmom and my dad and my mom for my life and the way it is today. Or I can choose to do things differently. I can choose to see that this happened for a reason, right? And I've done things in my life, and I'm not going to beat myself up for those things because that's ridiculous. Again, what is that doing? That is saying that when you beat yourself up, when you try to make up for things, that's saying that you are blaming yesterday's actions on today's awarenesses. You wouldn't have your awareness today if it wasn't for yesterday's mistake. It wouldn't be possible. So that makes no sense, right? So we have to let go. We have to let go. We have to see, thank you. Thank you for making that mistake. Thank you for me making that mistake. Now I have a newfound awareness. I can let go of this. And again, going back to giving up hope that the past could be any different. So these mistakes, these things, these actions, they've all happened to make us who we are today. And beating yourself up for something that you can only see now was detrimental is like punishing a child for falling as they learn to walk. And I'm going to say that again because this is really important. Beating yourself up for something that you can only see now was detrimental is like punishing a child for falling as they learn to walk. We can't beat ourselves up. We are learning, we are growing, we are trying to find balance within our life. It may seem that what you did was detrimental or what was done to you was detrimental, but in the present, it is actually beneficial because your awareness is now widened and you have a choice to do things differently, even if it's only to respond from neutrality. So if your only job is to have an internal neutral response to said event, then that's your only responsibility. You have to ask yourself, what is my responsibility here? What do I need to take ownership of? Let me just make sure there's no other exercises that I want to run through you. So this is a good one, especially when it comes to self-forgiveness. Ask yourself these questions and I want to give you guys these because I want you guys to be able to spend time on your own doing this. Ask yourself these questions based off an item on your list. And remember that list is all the things we wish that we could have changed from the past or from ourselves or from another. How have you benefited from your mistakes, actions, or decisions you have made in the past? How has your life overall been affected? What can you do differently in the future? Right? So when we have these new awarenesses, when we have these things that we're talking about here, how can we not repeat that mistake? How can we learn from that? What is it trying to show us? How can we do things differently? And that's the key, that I'm going to be going into in a program that I'm about to be launching is really learning about repetition, right? You didn't wake up one day wounded. It's not like one event, one thing is the source of every wounding in your life, right? I've talked a lot about, if you follow me, the core wounds and getting to the root of the issue. And this was the awareness that I have come into is yes, there is a root, there is a beginning when that wound took place, when that initial stab, that initial poke happened. But then over your life, there kept being more and more and more. Maybe the experience looked different, but the energy of it was the same. And it made that wound bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the cement poured in and it became a belief or a programming or a patterning. So it's never going to be one event, but it is healing the root emotion. It is healing the root energy of all the experiences. This is why things keep happening. It is an opportunity for you in every time that this happens to put a new practice in place. We have old patterns. We don't just heal the wound and all of a sudden we're free. We have to practice. We have to do the work. We have to be diligent. We have to put the new practice, the new pattern, the new programming into action every day until it is cemented into our being, until we have embodied it. How did or will this mistake help me to live better in my future? What did this experience cause you to know you really wanted? Sometimes we think we know what we want, and then we go and screw it up and it doesn't work, and we're like, what the heck? And we think about it, we feel into it, and we realize I didn't really want to do that. I was just doing it because I had to make money, or I was just doing it because I thought it would make that person happy, or I was just doing it because I needed to make up for something that happened to my child, right? Oftentimes when a parent or a spouse passes away, we feel that we now have to step into the role of the caregiver and do everything, or we have to do things for our children because their mom or dad passed away, and we need to make up for that loss of experience. And that's not our job. That happened if you had a physical loss, that loss happened just as much for you as it did for them. And there is a benefit from it. There is a newfound awareness. There is a new connection. There is a new opportunity. And even if they're gone, like with my dad, I had to heal that relationship on an energetic level. I had to connect with him and to work through that energy for me with him in spirit. And the only way to do that is to get super quiet, is to sit in that stillness, to connect with your heart, to have the intention of connecting with them, and to listening to what your heart is telling you. We can't make anybody else's life better. We can only give compassion. We can only be vulnerable. We can only show our truth. We can only release our emotion and show another that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay, and that it's actually a courageous thing to do. We're not here to fix another. We have to lead by example. We have to express our energy. We have to allow others to see us in our vulnerability and see us move through that process. You know, when my dad died, I felt almost responsible for my brother. I felt responsible for his death, and especially for my son, who was super close to him, and he was still very young at the time. Like, you want to do things to make up for it, but it's not for you to make up for. It's not your job. Your job is to be vulnerable. Your job is to love yourself through it and to love them through it. Your job is to see how this has shifted your life. Your job is to open up your purview and see that we are just physical beings, or spiritual beings in a physical body. We're having a physical experience, that they haven't actually left us. We just can't see them because they're in a different vibration. But we can feel them, we can hear them, we can connect to them. And the same goes with going through a spiritual awakening. You know, I have shedded so many identities. I had to face the fact that this isn't what I always believed. I had to face the fact that this is how I always acted. I had to let go of that person who I used to be. And it really was like grieving an aspect of me. It was like an internal death. And I've had many of those. I had one this year. Every time I step into a wider awareness at a higher vibration, I have to say goodbye. I have to grieve and let go of who I used to be, because I am no longer that person. It's called transcendence, and it's what we were here to do. We are here to transcend constantly, to evolve and move into a greater awareness. And this is why we can't live in a box. We can't be close-fisted. We have to see that we don't know everything. We have to see that there's tons of opportunity and possibilities, that we live in an infinite universe. And we don't have to know all the answers. We just have to be open to them. We just have to tune into that silent piece inside of us and say, it's okay that yesterday I believed this and today I believe this. Doesn't mean anything about me. It means I've evolved. It means I'm allowed to shift and grow and change as a person. And by being okay with that, we allow another to be okay with that. And I went through a horrible experience this year, and I had to make that choice. Am I going to sit here and suffer and not wanting to let go of something that made me comfortable because I knew that person, I knew what she did, I knew how she felt, to this new person that's open and is now receiving the new parts of her being? It's the same thing. We grieve our old identities, and that's okay too. We have to move through that process and see that it's happening for us, and that life is better when we step into, how am I benefiting from this? How can I make this better in my life? Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, and so this is the last thing that we're gonna end with today, and this has a lot to do with everything that we experience, and that is that we are never afraid of the event or the experience. We are afraid of what it's going to feel like, and this is why I've developed that the technique of, when I'm triggered, when I'm feeling that pain, that remembrance of what that person brought to me, that emotion, whatever it is, I allow myself to sit and quiet, to listen to the silence, to listen to my heart, my breath. And I allow myself, I invoke that emotion that I'm so afraid of feeling. I ask myself to be enveloped in it. Because the more that I feel it and experience it, the less afraid of it I am, and the less resistance I am in. Because if you are in resistance of anything, you are in resistance to everything. I'm going to say that again. If you are in resistance to anything, you are in resistance to everything. You have to step out of the energy of resistance completely. And you have to accept the feeling. And when you accept the feeling, you are opening yourself up to receive the next thing, the next free feeling, the next joy, the next amount of money, the next person, whatever. You're opening yourself up. But you have to come into that acceptance so that you can receive. And a part of that is feeling the thing that we are afraid of feeling. So whether you're afraid of failure, whether you're afraid of success, whether you're afraid of being rejected, whether you're afraid of being alone the rest of your life, whether you're afraid of dying, whatever it is, we have to allow the emotion to envelop our being so that we are no longer afraid of it. So that when it comes, we can say, it's okay. I can feel this for a moment, and I can allow it to pass as it will naturally, because this is another controversial thing. And I don't care if it's controversial, because it's meant to trigger people. It's meant to catalyze people. These heavy emotions that we feel are only meant to last 10, 15, 20 minutes. Anything over that is self-obsession. Anything past that is you holding on to attachment. And I can say that because I have spent many years suffering. And it was because I made it about me. It was because I just determined that that thing happened, and it made me who I was. It was my identity. That I was not worthy was my identity. That bad things had to happen to me. That I had to struggle. So I did. So remember that the more that we are not afraid of the feeling, the more open we are to receiving and allowing these emotions to rise and pass, and we just can ride the seas. And we go back to the derolling of ourselves and stripping those identities. So our struggles are not for nothing. And I want you to find out, when you feel suffering, it's a reminder that you are attaching that meaning, to let go, to let flow, and to let that energy move again. And to ask yourself, how would you define yourself now if you weren't defining yourself based upon all these attachments, based upon all these experiences, based upon what could happen in the future, based upon something that you can no longer change? If you only had to define yourself by this present moment, what would it be? So this is my way of moving through forgiveness. It's very different than most, but I find that when we go through the process of forgiveness, we realize how much responsibility we had in our own existence, in our own suffering. And we have to take that responsibility. We have to own it and accept it and then release it and see what can we see now that we weren't seeing before, because we were in that resistance, because we were holding on to that identity, because we were making that about us and saying that we could have changed something that we couldn't, that being in this energy now is going to make any kind of difference about the past. If we strip all of that away, who are we now? How would you define yourself? And identity is all ego, by the way. It is, because at the end of the day, we are spiritual beings. We are light beings having a human experience. And we are love. They don't cross over and hold resentment and judgment. They're not up there going, you shouldn't have done this. This is all your fault. None of that's happening. They are immersed in love, and that is it. Okay, so I'm going to read through some of these questions. Thank you for sharing your story and dedication to help others. You have been such a gift in my life, and I appreciate you. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then Jade said free. And yes, you do. You do feel free. It's very freeing. It's very freeing. So I hope that these perspectives, this workshop, these exercises, I hope that you guys use them. I hope that you take these questions and you spend the time sitting with yourself, listening to the quiet, listening to your heart, remembering that you are more than this physical body, remembering that you came here to have an experience, and that you go through these exercises and you allow them to help shift your perspective. And remember that forgiveness can be used in many, many ways. We've gone through so many different ways of which they can be used. And this was only brought forward to help those that are really struggling with letting go right now, to whether it's an old identity or the fact that they're not where they want to be, or because somebody passed away, or because they had a lot of trauma in their life. This whole world needs a lot of forgiveness right now. We need to let go, and we need to change how we invest our energy. Do you want to invest your energy and feel exhausted all the time because you're trying to change something that can't be, or you're worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? Or do you want to step and use all that energy in this present moment and think, okay, this is the only space of which I can change anything. I'm going to step into the energy of possibility and opportunity and creation. Because everything, from the pen to the cup to the candle to my headphones, everything came from a desire, from a need, and somebody stepped into the energy of creation. We literally have created our reality. How can you go and change and create your reality now, based upon the awareness that now, in this moment, is where the power is? The power is now. Nothing else matters. Everything in the past built you. Everything in front of you is not there yet. It's not your business. Your business is here. And that is it. So thank you. Thank you guys for joining me. And if you're in my group, Magical Soul, I would love to hear how you guys worked through these exercises and what this workshop has helped shift in you. This was my gift to you, and I hope My hope is that this shifts something and changes your life and allows you to step into the power that you are, the power of how beautiful your life could be. And again, I thank you guys all so much for being here, for watching the replay, and I will see you next time. Bye.